All right, we are back for another episode of Eggcellent Adventures, and this time we have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Purina formula himself. The king of the beakers is in the building. Dr. Patrick Biggs has come down. He's graced us with his presence. Shout out to Haley. We appreciate you. And yes, we're here to talk everything about chicken nutrition, life cycle, and more. Absolutely. So, of course, if you guys don't know, Dr. Biggs is one of the brains behind formulating the nutrition for chicken nutrition and poultry nutrition with Purina. We've been using the products on our farm and BlackYard Homestead, and we've got excellent production, pun intended. And our chickens are really happy. Every time I break out that bag, they go crazy. The ducks go crazy. The goats, absolutely. And to have you here is like really special, man. So it's cool to get a celebrity in the building, especially a chicken world celebrity, you know, the origin story. Cause unless you grew up saying, I want to be a chicken daddy, a chicken farmer daddy, or a chicken, cook. How did you get into like poultry and, poultry science?
So I grew up in the city. I'm not a farm kid.
Same, me. I grew up in New Jersey, so I get it.
You know, I was interested in animals, and like most kids who probably start in the city, it was wanting to be a veterinarian. And so then, you know, you go off to school and you start getting into that, and you're like, there are more options than just going to being a veterinarian to working with that. And, you know, you take all the different animal classes. And, I actually had pet cockatiels at the time. So that's kind of where the seed got started. Working with a pet store at the time, and I had cockatiels, and then, you know, it was the pet store was pushing us to understand nutrition so that we could sell the dog food and that to the customers. So it was kind of a combination of all of those things. And then as I got into classes, I met with the poultry professor. And was talking to him, and he found out I had pet birds and was interested in that. And then that's kind of where he kind of took an interest in me. And then we built that relationship. And then I ended up going to grad school, working with him, doing work in chickens.
Chicken. That's where it started. The egg was laid in college. I see. So, man, that's pretty cool. Like I grew up I'm almost the same, wanting to be a veterinarian. I always had all types of different animals and stuff like that. And then I went the totally different route. I went into radio, but it's brought me to you here. So it works. So what was like, we asked everybody here, what was your cluck moment? That moment that, you know, okay, I am a poultry guy now. Like, what was that moment you realized this is your life?
I mean, I guess it was probably when you get that first job, but you know, it took me probably a minute or so to kind of wrap my head around doing chicken nutrition. And that, for me, it was probably during grad school, and the things that I was working on were actually interested in pop culture type stuff. So at the time that I was going through grad school, it was really the time where animal rights and welfare became a big thing. Right. The big thing at the time was withdrawing feed from chickens for long periods of times to get them to go into molt, which was a standard practice in the commercial poultry industry. And then the animal welfare groups were really taking issue with that. So my first project was looking at how we can get the same or similar results without having to withdraw feed and starve the chickens for 14 days at a time. And so there was a lot of interest in that. I know a lot of the fast food restaurants were very interested in what that was going on. And, you know, over time, you know, the work that I did with, and the others that were doing that stuff kind of helped kind of turn the industry standard. So that practice of withdrawing feed for multiple days is no longer in practice. And so we found ways that you can get similar results and still provide food to the birds and kind of support them through that period and get that stuff. And so, it was ultimately just the grad school stuff that really kind of got me interested in. And I started doing work with things like prebiotics and probiotics, things to support gut health. And that's kind of been where my career has followed me as, you know, in my professional career, is doing that to, you know, what kind of feed additives can we put in the products? You know, I spent my first, 8-10 years working in commercial production, and then making that transition from the commercial production where it's all about maximizing profit, getting the most amount of eggs out of your animals was the big thing, to coming to Purina and switching to more of the backyard variety, where the targets, the goals aren't quite the same. It's more about kind of, people who have 4 or 5 chickens don't necessarily care.
To have 200 eggs in a day, right?
Right. So it's kind of going from that transition of how can I, get the feed least expensive and maximize production out of those animals, to how can I support those birds through all of the trials and tribulations that backyard owners and their chickens go through.
Right.
Because, a lot of those people who start with chickens have never raised chickens. They may have never raised an animal in their life. Chickens might have been the first animal they've gotten to. And they're surprisingly easy to take care of. But if you don't know what you're doing, you're always worried about, like, I'm responsible for these chickens and I don't want to screw it up.
Right.
And so it's more about that emotional connection with the animals. They're similar to how you would care for a dog and cat. They're part of your family for a lot of people, and kind of making that transition from not thinking of them as livestock to thinking of them as
like pets,
family members. So it's been a fun journey.
Yeah, I could tell, man. I really like what you were saying when you switch over to Purina. It's not just about, okay, let's try to turn and burn these birds. Now it's about, you got different stages. You have your chicken in. We don't care about making them just be for production. So there's other things going on too. And I really enjoy that you enjoy getting into that part of it.
Right. And, it's the thing I also enjoy is working with the people and trying to educate them on how to care for those birds.
Yes.
Kind of answer those questions, because there's all sorts of questions, and, how do you know where to go to really find out? There's not a great source of information, although the internet has certainly expanded that, but sometimes you have to sort through
sometimes, all the time. You got to sort through all the time. You don't have to be nice, Doc. This is
just sort fact from crap.
Right.
Be a bit of a challenge. So I do enjoy kind of working with the people and kind of helping them work through their questions, trying to provide a source of truth for them as to what they need to be doing to raising their animals, things they need to be thinking about, all of the considerations, when do I feed what food? What do my chickens eat? What do my rooster eat? What do my ducks need? Can I feed them all the same thing? Or, what can I mix together? It's all of those things, and predators and everything else, all of the things that you don't necessarily think about when it comes to raising an animal in your backyard.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's very key in what you're saying. What I do like is we can kind of get into like cycle, because as a backyard chicken owner, like you said, you get these birds and they're kind of like pets. They become family kind of, because you start seeing their personality, and it's not a farm, right, per se. So when the chicken when it gets older, not producing anymore, we're not just letting it loose or making it dinner. Like, this bird is probably going to retire in our backyard. So can you take me through that? Because I'm like, I'm still like 3 years into this, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're going to start to see some changes. So your chickens are going to be really productive for about the first 3 years of their life. So you're going to get good egg production, almost an egg a day, each of those chickens for up to that period. At 3 years of age, that's when production starts to taper off.
Okay.
They're like any animal that as you get older, you're less reproductive.
Yes.
That's just how it is. I know we look at the websites and all of the things about, my chickens can produce 300 eggs a year. That's really the first year that you get that. And then every year after that, it's fewer eggs. Maybe it's, 250 the second year, and then it's 200 the third year. And then as you progress into years 4, 5, and 6, the production still drops more. You're starting to go every other day, maybe every 2 days, and every 3 days. And then usually between about years 6 and 8, that's when egg production really starts to taper off for those. She's kind of hitting her Henopause.
Menopause.
There you go. You're not the only one who's got the puns.
There we go.
So she's going to start to slowly go out of egg production. And usually by 8 years of age, we figure that they're mostly out of production. So it's a matter of figuring out how do you feed those birds and keep them healthy, making sure they get the right thing, because, you know, a high calcium diet is necessary for chickens because they have to make eggshells, and they have to get that calcium from their diet to make those eggshells.
And you guys do a great with formulating that. Like we got the pellets, we got the omega-3, you got these different types of feed that help with egg production.
Right.
But as they keel back, they don't need all of that.
They don't need all of that. And so as they get older, then it's more of kind of looking at, is there a low calcium feed that you can use for those birds? And so we have one called Flock Raiser. That's kind of what you would, as those birds are kind of hitting their twilight and heading into retirement, you know, continuing to feed them a high calcium layer feed is not necessarily going to be the best for their overall health.
Okay.
And so switching them to a low calcium feed is much better for those birds as they get older. Now, there's always the struggle of, if you only have one coop and you have different ages, it gets to be a challenge feeding separately. So, you know, there are options that you can do to think about how I can provide the best nutrition for the entire flock. One option is to feed everybody Flock Raiser, which is a low calcium feed. So everybody's going to get the nutrition that they need, but then also provide supplemental oyster shell. So put it in a separate container, put it in there for the birds, and birds are actually pretty good about eating to meet nutrient requirements. So they will eat the oyster shell to get the extra calcium that they need to make those eggshells. So your younger birds who are still in the midst of egg production will spend more time eating out of the oyster shell container. And then the older ladies who don't necessarily need that calcium are going to ignore it for the most part.
That makes so much sense. Look at these trade secrets we're getting right now. Okay.
Right? But the problem with that is you are relying on the bird to
make the choice.
To make that choice. Yeah. So your egg production of those younger birds might not be as good if they were eating all of that calcium in their layer feed. So, you know, there's always trade-offs with all of those things, but you have to figure out what's best. Is egg production, are you valuing egg production more, or is it the quality of life and getting the right nutrition for everybody in there?
Gotcha.
So, and for most backyard people that might have 10 or 20 chickens, getting 10 or 20 eggs a day.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Pretty fast.
Very fast.
You don't necessarily need 100% egg production out of those birds. So maybe trading off a little egg production for some peace of mind, knowing that, you know, Loretta and Henrietta and whatever, the Oprah Henfrey, is, you know, getting the nutrition that she needs, and you're not causing problems.
Gotcha. Let's talk about roosters too. When you have roosters in your flock, a lot of backyard people don't have them because they got HOAs or this rule, that rule. But if you have a rooster in your flock, what kind of feed should we be doing? Because they don't lay eggs.
They don't lay eggs. And
hopefully your rooster's not laying eggs.
If your rooster's laying eggs, you give us a call.
Yeah, we're
going to get you on the show. But yeah, I think that's a big misconception, and it's a big challenge when it comes to birds. Any bird, not just chickens, but ducks and turkeys, and if you got game birds. It's one of the few animals where the males and females have drastically different requirements, because the female needs the extra calcium to make those eggshells, and the males don't. So they don't need a layer feed. So really, it's best if you're not feeding your roosters layer feed.
Okay.
What that does is they have to get rid of all that extra calcium, and it goes to their kidneys and it causes some kidney damage, and it can lead to kidney failure, some other health issues. And ultimately it's going to shorten the lifespan of your rooster. So I always joke with my people, it really depends on how you feel about your roosters.
Makes sense.
You know, it's kind of what you want to do, but to provide him the best nutrition is to really put him on Flock Raiser, which would be a low calcium feed that Purina offers. And that's going to be what he really needs and what's going to get him to thrive best. So again, if you're housing the males and the females together in the same coop, making sure that he's eating that and the layers are getting the layer feed, it gets to be a challenge. Now, if you have the standard size chickens, the roosters tend to be a little taller. So one way you can work around that is put feed in a separate feeder, flock raiser in it, hang it up a little higher so that your roosters can still get to it and that the ladies can't.
Okay.
And then hopefully the rooster will spend more time eating out of that flock raiser, that low calcium feed. Because again, they are pretty good at eating to meet their nutrient requirements.
Makes sense.
Hopefully he'll realize that layer feed isn't the best nutrition for him, and he will spend his time eating out of the flock raiser, the low calcium feed, and the hens will eat their layer feed and still maintain egg production. So there isn't a perfect solution when it comes to housing males and females together. But if you want to be sure that your roosters are getting the best nutrition, they shouldn't be only offered a layer feed.
Okay. That makes sense. And I mean, like you said, it's not perfect, but it's something. It's a way of kind of a workaround. So that makes a whole lot of sense. So, because when you play the chicken game and you start catching chicken math and you buy some baby birds that are all supposed to be hens, I always end up with the rooster.
Right.
So that's a cool trick to kind of play with.
Because as much as they try to sex the chickens and make sure that they're only getting hens, that's not 100% foolproof.
Yeah.
And there are some breeds of chickens that are just so small out of the egg that they can't sex them. And so I call those straight run. And so there's a 50-50 chance that they're males. Yeah. That, half of those are males. So you do run that risk.
Yeah, you do. I've ran it a few times.
Right.
Yep. So tell me about when you get to Purina, your dreams have come true, and now you're a Purina scientist.
Right.
What was one of those jobs that you had to do when you get there? You were like, oh, this is going to be a challenge, but this is going to be fun.
Well, I think the biggest one was adjusting from the commercial mindset to the more backyard pet setting, and adjusting my expectations about how to feed the birds, because what we need to feed the birds for maximum production is not necessarily what they need
to long life and everything. Right.
You have to think a lot of the research that is done for chickens is based on birds that are 2 years old or younger. Most commercial chickens don't make it longer than 2 years. Right. After 2 years, they're just not productive enough, and it costs too much to keep feeding them.
I see that. I have a couple, we saw, I had a couple rescue birds, and they were right at 2 to 3 years old, and their condition was terrible. Yeah. And you could tell that they were overproduced, not cared for in a way. And when I got them and switched it over and got them on Purina feed, and I promise they're not paying me to say this. This is just really what happened, right? I got them on Purina feed, and you can see dramatically the difference, their energy level, the amount of feathers that they have, even the production. It may not be a popping out like that, but it's still pretty high. I could just tell they're more happy.
Right. And so it's been fun to try and balance the commercial production side of what we understand about chickens and figuring out how to translate that into the backyard setting, and then make adjustments to the nutrition based on what the backyard chicken needs. And then you also have to remember, in a commercial setting, we're using basically white leghorns. It's a high production bird, but then look at your own flock. How many different breeds of chickens do you have?
Too many. Lots and lots of different ones.
And then you have to balance the needs of a bird who has the potential to lay 300 eggs per year with the one who's only going to lay 50 eggs per year.
Right.
So you got this wide range of egg production in there again. And then you've got some of your chickens who are, 4 or 5, maybe 6 pounds. And then you've got some of your smaller ones that might only be 2 or 3 pounds. So trying to figure out how to put together a formula, a feed that's going to meet the majority of those requirements and keep those birds healthy is a fun task to do. And, it makes it more challenging because it's, people have been studying poultry nutrition for 100+ years. So there's lots of information out there, but, there's not a lot on these backyard birds. And so it's fun to, as a scientist, you always want to try and explore and find something new. And so this is kind of uncharted territory, especially like we talked about earlier, getting into those birds that are 4, 5, 6, 8. the average lifespan of a chicken is probably about 10 years. However, the world record is somewhere in the 22-year range. So those birds can live for a really long time.
Yes.
And they're not necessarily going to produce eggs for that long. So it's trying to figure out how you care for those birds. And then working with the human side of that equation, explaining to them, most people are like 22 years. Like, I got to keep these birds for that long now.
Right.
That's unfortunately the people in the backyard that, doesn't always work out that way. Predators.
Right.
Predators are a big problem. And
HOA presidents. It's lots of things that could affect you.
The neighborhood dogs, sometimes it's vehicles, and, accidents happen and so on and so forth. But, trying to get everyone to understand what to expect.
It makes a lot of sense. It's almost like catering a wedding. It's like, okay, these people don't eat this. They're vegan, they're vegetarian, but I got all these people coming, so I got to make the correct spread. But with the chickens, it's not like they can't pick, each one. Right. So you got to kind of put it all together. Right. Cool. All right, let's talk about care, because we've seen the coops. This is how I met you on the internet. I've seen you talking from the Purina coops. Tell me about some things we should have, like some must-haves. You got somebody out there, they're getting chickens for the first time, or they've had chickens, but they want a better setup situation. What are some of the must-haves that we need for a coop?
Right. So coops there's a wide variety that you can get. I would say the thing that is probably the biggest one is getting one that's sized appropriately, one for your chickens and maybe also for yourself.
Okay. So
if you want to get in there and clean those chicken coops, having one that you can either get in mostly and stand up, maybe you can't stand up fully, but and no one really wants to crawl around in the coop and run on their hands and knees. All the chicken manure and everything else that's down there.
Right.
So having something that you can get in and out of easily, you can clean easily is great. The other big thing is going to be predator protection. I think that's the biggest thing. I would say, even if you live in a city, there are predators out there. You put a buffet of chicken in your backyard,
and chickens are delicious to not just humans,
right? Everything loves chicken. The raccoons, the foxes, the hawks, snakes, sometimes it's the neighborhood kids, the dogs and cats that roam the neighborhood. Those are all things that are potential,
possums,
mink, you got all of those. There's a whole, anything basically
that has teeth,
raccoons,
likes chicken,
possums.
Right.
It's all of that is potential for, turning your chickens into dinner. And unfortunately, most first time chicken owners get a coop and they think it's safe for their chickens. And unfortunately they wake up one day and it's a massacre.
And there's just feathers everywhere.
Right. Yeah. And it's not something you want to go through. And so it's kind of a constant battle of figuring out how you can predator proof that coop. Sometimes it's, making sure you're using the right wire. Yeah,
because chicken wire. Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, chicken wire is great for keeping your chickens where you want chickens, but it's not great for keeping everything else away from your chickens.
Yeah.
Foxes, raccoons, all of that stuff. That stuff's pretty flexible and they're pretty persistent. They'll widen that chicken wire so that they can get through. So hardware cloth, that welded wire, it's more expensive.
It's worth it.
But it is worth it because it's definitely going to keep that. And then keep it small, probably about a 1/2 inch square opening on that. That's going to keep out most things. And then you can also, it helps too if you bury that wire down into the ground about 6 inches deep. And then if you can run it out parallel to the ground a little further, maybe another
almost 6. like a L.
Make like an L.
Yeah. Okay.
And then that's going to keep things from trying to dig under the coop and getting in there as well. Those are big things. Anywhere that you've got a door or a window or some sort of opening, you need to have some sort of wire mesh
and a lock. That a a 3-year-old can't get into.
Right. They do sell predator proof. So like hook and eye loops are what commonly get used, but those are pretty easy for a fox or a raccoon to flip up and they go, but they do make some that are kind of spring loaded and harder for them. So get predator proof locks are great things to do. Any windows or doors, anything that's going to be open should have a mesh. Don't rely on, like, if you have a screen, just a mesh screen for a window, it needs something else behind it, because those mesh screens aren't going to stop something from hitting it hard enough or tearing into it and getting through. Space is always something to think about. We talk 10 square feet per chicken. That's a combination of both the coop and the run area. So the coop would be the indoor part. So keep that probably figure 2 to 3 square feet per bird. The run area, really, you can go as large as you want. It's just up to you. Like, just the bigger it gets, the more expensive it gets to fence in and protect. And then you always have to kind of keep in mind, you've commented on chicken math.
Please.
You might start with 5 or 6 chickens. And then if it's allowed, you might end up, next thing you know, you got 20, 30, 40 chickens. Yeah. So if you can't expand the coop, then maybe think about adding a second coop. You can add multiples. So, keeping all of that in mind, you've got electricity is always a concern. How are you going to store food? How are you going to store water? You want to keep pests out, rodents out of the feed. What's the easiest way for you to get water to them? If you live in an area where it freezes, how are you going to get water to them in the winter? Are your hoses going to freeze up, and then you're going to have to haul buckets of water from the house? Electricity comes in handy because it helps you to clean things. It also helps you during the winter months when it's cold. You can put heaters in to kind of help keep the water, heaters for the water, not for the chickens. Not for the chickens. Yeah. We certainly don't want you. The
frying chicken in the coop.
Chickens are actually going to be surprisingly tolerant of cold weather. So they don't need a heat source out there.
Okay.
But keeping the water from freezing is a big thing, especially depending on where you're at. So you can keep that, there are lots of options. We use like bird bath heaters.
Okay.
So we have at Purina at our research farm in St. Louis.
Yeah. And it was pretty cold in St. Louis.
Yeah, it does get cold. We've had some times where it's gotten down into the negative digits and stays there for a while. And so we've tried several different things. There are heated water fountains that you can get that plug in and don't, that keep the water from freezing. We've found the most success with actually using bird bath heaters.
Okay.
So we use those. The key thing you have to remember here is it's electricity and water. And so there's risk to yourself and your chickens. And you just, whatever you're doing to run electricity out to your coop, make sure that you're doing it safely. Right? If you have to run lines from the house out to the coop, working with an electrician or someone who knows what they're doing is certainly a benefit, because that's a pretty tragic accident that's easily prevented. So
I can see that. I'm glad you said that. I've seen people online like putting heat lamps in their coop, and I'm like, please don't do that, because I've seen how much dust chickens accumulate.
Yeah, I mean, heat lamps they're very hot. There's a lot of dander that comes off of your birds, and they're not strong flyers, but they do jump and they flap and they knock it down, and
barn fires can happen.
Right. It's we see it every spring when people are raising young birds in the houses with those heat lamps starting fires. We see stories every winter of somebody's the coop catching on fire, and then they're frying their chickens right there. And it's not what
nobody wants. You didn't buy those chickens for rotisserie,
right? That's not the fried chicken you want
at all. At all.
The Colonel does not approve of that.
No 7 herbs and spices. So let's talk about that too. When you're brooding chicks, right? Some of the things that we need to have, because I've switched from heat lamps. Now I use the heating plates. I'm now using puppy pads when I do ducks, because they make so much mess. And with the chickens, I use like hemp bedding. But tell us like some must-haves, like when we're brooding babies.
So, those are the key things: food and water, a heat source, and those plates are certainly the preferred method, because there's less risk of fire with that. Bedding material is going to be important. Something down. We want to make sure that the environment that the chickens are being raised in is something that you have a little more control over. So a lot of times people, the first several weeks, you might want to raise those birds maybe indoors or in a garage, or maybe if you've got a barn that you can control the temperature in, that's always a possibility. But they like it to be nice and warm. So think about 95 degrees Fahrenheit during that first week. And then you can slowly drop that temperature about 5 degrees a week after that. But then I always say, use those numbers as a guideline, but really watch the birds and let them really guide you as to what the temperature needs to be. So if you find that they're all huddling under the heat source, then it needs to be a little warmer in there. If you find that they're staying as far away from the heated area as possible, then it's probably too hot. So then we need to lower it. So, and then just making sure that they're getting the right food. They need to be on a starter feed, till they're about 18 weeks of age. So stay on that. If you're using a medicated feed, we have our Start and Grow medicated feed is medicated with amprolium. So it's not an antibiotic. So if that's a concern, you don't have to worry about that. That's there to prevent against a parasite that's fairly common in chickens called coccidiosis.
Right.
And so that medication keeps that cocci parasite from becoming a big problem in your birds and keeps them healthy as possible. But if you are feeding them the medicated feed, you need to feed that to them until they transition to a layer feed. Okay. It's not something that really you should feed for 4 or 6 weeks and then all right, now that's fine. And I can switch them over. If there's coccidiosis in the environment, if you take them off the medicated feed, then they're going to be exposed to it. And those birds grow really fast. And if they have to spend some of that nutrition that you're feeding them fighting that challenge, then they're not growing, they're not developing at the right rate. And so the feed is intended to get those birds to kind of the right body size at 18 weeks. This is one of those situations where we don't want those birds to grow too fast or too slow. It's about getting them to grow just right. So 18 weeks, their body is developed properly for them to lay eggs. Especially, and you're keeping these birds, maybe for 8, 15, maybe it's 20 years. That the first feed is really the most important thing. And that's where you're going to make the most mistakes that are going to have long-term implications there. So keeping them on a good starter feed is really the best thing you can do, and keeping them on it till they're at least 16 weeks of age. Good stuff. Good stuff to know. It's really informative because like you said, that first feed is going to be really important. It's like you start them off right, they end up right. It's like teaching a kid how to read early. Definitely understand. All right, let's have a little fun with this thing, because I'm sure that over at Purina, I know you guys have the coops there. Do you have your own personal pet chickens as well? I do not have personal chickens. Okay. Where I live, my HOA does not allow chickens. Well, we got to move, Doc. But I got you. But every day you come to work and you got your own flock, your own access to the flock. Yeah, we have 12. We have 12 coops at the farm. Okay. So, living the dream. Living the dream. So we have 150 plus birds there. Sheesh. We can do all of our research with, and we get the eggs from those birds. All right. So. And different. So what are some of the different breeds that are there? Oh, what? So in the past, we've stuck with barred rocks. Okay. But this year we've branched out, and we've got, I think, 6 or 8 different breeds. So we've got some silkies. I'm trying to remember there's some Delawares, some Columbias, some Wyandottes, some Easter eggers. Okay. I love Easter eggers cheeks. They got the little fuzzy cheeks, right? We've got Cochins, some Aracanas. Okay. So y'all got blue eggs, green eggs, brown eggs, all the eggs. We've got all the different colors. So, we've had salmon faverols. We've had a wide variety of birds over the years. And so that's also helped us to kind of raise a different variety, so that as we're, talking with people who are raising a variety of animals, we can talk about some of the challenges that we've seen with there. Recently we just had a heat wave, and we went through and we found our Cochins did not like that heat. Right. We've had heat waves before. This last one was pretty extreme. The temperatures got way up there, and those heavy feathered birds, that was too much heat for those birds. So that's, we learned the lesson. And then as, I'm out talking with other people and we talking about heat, there are things you can do to heat, but those birds they get
Right.
overwhelmed. And so, we able to raise the silkies. We've raised some old English game chickens. So we're raising a variety of things. So when people say, well, my specific breed needs this, and I'm like, well, maybe it doesn't. Like, they're all chickens. The nutrition's really the same. So we hear a lot of times people with silkies say that they need a different level of nutrition. And we've raised silkies at the farm. We've feeding them the same thing we feed, the Orpingtons and the Barred Rocks, and those birds are doing just fine. So
there we go. Okay, silky people, let's get off of our soapbox.
right? Birds are adorable.
Right.
They're a little different. But nutritionally, they don't need.
Right.
Their needs aren't different.
Yeah, my silkies, they just need tutoring. That's what they need. They're beautiful birds, but they can't find the door to save their life. I understand that. So what are some of your favorite breeds?
Oh, my favorite breeds. So sea brights.
Okay. I've never had one of those.
Yeah, I really like the sea brights. I just think that scallop look on their feathers, and it takes me back to my days of having cockatiels.
Oh yeah, they are pretty. Yeah.
You get
Get it.
that look on it too. So I do like that, and it's that's really probably one of my favorites. The salmon faverolles are also a fun looking breed.
You just pick all the chickens with tough names. Like Salmon faverol. You made that up. That's not even a real breed. I'm just kidding. So Doc, with this chicken names, right? You hear some of these names, the Henriettas, the this is and that. So what is your favorite chicken name?
Oh, I like Jennifer Henniston.
I like that. I had a Roost Willis before. A Roost Willis, yes.
Good. We don't get a whole lot of names for the roosters, but yeah, the female names, people playing off the celebrity names. Yeah. Oprah Henfrey is one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one. The penny.
Yeah.
So
I like that. I like that a lot. So if you had to choose one breed of chicken for, let's just say you're on a desert island, right? You can only have one breed of chicken, and you're going to be on this desert island for at least 6 months. So you may need some eggs, you may need some meat, you may need a companion, right? Because you're by yourself, so you need a chicken that's also kind of social. So we want the trifecta chicken.
I think I'd probably have to go with an Orpington.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're good egg layers. They tend to be friendly, sociable. So you might get some good companionship. And then, if she stops laying eggs and worse comes to worse, they're also a bit of a dual purpose bird. So she's got a little bit of meat on her. So if I had to sacrifice her,
there we go. The Orpington.
At least have a meal for a day or two.
There you go. Orpington is a survival man's chicken. I love my Orpington. I love Blue. I have a Lavender Orpington. She's really sweet, nice, walks up on you, pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can see that.
Yeah, I think the Orpingtons, often the Labradors.
Yeah, the Labradors of chickens. Okay. So who is the Rottweiler of chickens?
That can vary. I'm trying to think. There's so much personality in the chickens that you could get an Orpington.
Yeah.
Awful to everyone else, and you could get one that's just the lover. And you'll see that too with a lot of roosters. Yeah, you'll get roosters get a bad name sometimes. They're not all.
I had a coaching rooster. I had a little coaching rooster. His name was Legs, because he had those furry legs and he was so cool. He just run around, do his little rooster dance. He used to run up to me and jump on my lap, but HOA, I had to rehome him. But he was cool. Legs was the man.
Right. Yeah. So you'll see that. It's so much personality. It's like anything with people, dogs, cats, whatever. Some of them are going to be super friendly, and others could care less that you're there. Yeah. You're going to see that with your chickens. They're going to be happy when you feed them, but once you're done feeding them, some of them be like, all right, it's time for you to go. Yeah. And I'm done with you. Yeah. You've served your purpose.
Like cats. They're like cat chickens.
Right. But then, if you want your animals, your chickens to kind of be personal, spending as much time as you can with them kind of helps to get through that. some that you're never going to get through. I've got a cat at home that we've had her for 3 years now, and she doesn't want nothing
to do with people unless you got food.
Just me. She
She
she likes the kids and the wife, but
not
she's
you.
like, nah.
Yeah, I don't want the chicken guy around me.
He's home. Now I gotta go back.
Oh man, well, we're gonna pray for you and the cat's relationship, man. So cool, man. We appreciate you coming by, man. Any advice? What's one piece of advice, if you would give yourself when you're coming out of chicken school and you're ready to hit the world and spread your wings? That was a lot of puns in one. If y'all can, feel free to unfollow me after this. One piece of advice you would give yourself, knowing that you'll be where you are now.
Oh man, I'd be like, stay the course. Because the path isn't always straight and narrow. Sometimes it wanders and meanders. I've been through several jobs and I'm kind of finding my path. I've lived in Illinois, I've been in California, North Carolina, Missouri. So, kind of just know what you're good at, know what you're passionate about, and then just, let the universe show you the path to get there.
There we go. And apply to that Purina job.
Right.
That's it, Dr. Biggs. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it, man. We had a blast. You guys stay tuned. We got more on the way. This has been another wonderful, excellent adventure with our celebrity guest, Dr. Patrick Biggs. You can catch him on Purina Feed Greatness page and giving out all that great advice and stuff like that. So we appreciate you, man. There we go. Let's hit this hype bell on the way out. See y'all next episode.